Esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, the management of the Satyagraha Committee, I am both surprised and overwhelmed that I should be presented with the Satyagraha Award and that I should be sharing the platform with well-respected struggle icons like Mrs. Luthuli and Mrs. Ndlovu, the latter two having spent their entire lives in struggle. I wish to thank the organizing committee for acknowledging me in this way. However, I must state that I cannot take this award as personal triumph for myself. You will recall that from 1961, many fled the country either to escape imprisonment or to seek better conditions abroad. In exile, there were hundreds of refugees who fled the country after the Sharpeville and Soweto uprisings. Many of them joined Umkhonto weSizwe in exile. You will recall that the ANC decision to follow the path of armed revolution was only taken after all peaceful means of protest inside the country had been exhausted. In exile, I was to find that the liberation movement had two wings, the political wing headed by Chris Hani and the military by Joe Modise. These commanders had tremendous experience in combat action, having joined Umkhonto during the 60s and had the experience of being members of the Luthuli detachment, which sought to find its way home from Rhodesia. Their long struggle to return to the country was a dream which could not be realized till 1990. In exile, therefore, given the difficulties of being in a foreign country with all its problems, we have to survive, and survive we did, united in the dream of realizing a free South Africa dedicated to the tenets of the Freedom Charter, which states, South Africa belongs to all those who live in it, black and white. The exile conditions of being pursued by the police, the onslaught of the SADF against refugees in the neighboring countries, kidnappings, abductions, bombings were the order of the day. We set about our work of establishing the ANC where we'd been granted refugee status and simultaneously maintained a link on the home front. We had many setbacks due to various levels of infiltration by the SADF. Our recruits were poisoned in the camps. There was poisoning of food, drinks, booby trapping of cars, bombing in the frontline states, several attempts on the lives of those who were known to be the leaders of the struggle. I speak of Slovo, McMurad, Ruth First, William Kanile, Shadrach Mapumulu, Jalson Kuzwayo, Zweli Nyanda, Krish Rabilo, Lenny Naidu, Johannes Mkhwanazi, Moses Mabida, and even those who died abroad. I speak of activists who left the country to seek out the ANC in their thousands from 1961 to 1990. These include Comrade Ganile, whose ear was sawn off during torture, John Gomomo, Stephen Dlamini, Stanley Mabizela, Patrick Nyawase, Joe Pillay, Krish Rabila, Lenny Naidu, Absalom Duma, who was bombed when he went to fetch post from the post boxes. They stood firm despite the arduous conditions. Then there are mysterious deaths of Elvis Governor, very much like the death of Albert Luthuli. At an organizing level, the youth were juxtaposed with the older comrades. It was never easy for someone from the potato boycott generation to interact with the Soweto generation. It was determination of the young lions, as Chris Hani called us, that attention was focused on the home front rather than on the international level by itself. I cannot end without acknowledging our past president, O.R. Tambo, who was the overall commander in exile, who has served more than 35 years as the acting president in exile and never claimed the title for himself. He was a sterling leader, respected by all the ranks within the ANC and internationally. His words, when interviewed by the BBC, was that the ANC is one of the oldest liberation movements in Africa. He stated that the principles and aims enunciated in the Freedom Charter was something that is steeped in the consciousness of all its members who sought democratic change. It is therefore a movement that cannot die. The ANC was born in 1912 and has survived to the present in all its formations. I therefore accept this award in the name of all those who gave their lives to the struggle and the many who have come home after long spells in exile and those who spent long years on Robben Island till 1990, not forgetting those who died while engaged in struggle, like Ahmed Tumor, killed in detention, Hussein Hafaji, who was killed, Babla Saluji, who died in detention, who's this? One Roxo, who was buried on Robben Island before the family could get there. Mapetla Mohapi was killed in detention, as Sangoma called him Gluli, who was hanged in detention. These are the unsung heroes of our revolution. Their deaths are stamped in the psyche of all those who are aware of the atrocities of the past regime. In conclusion, I say Amanda Awetu, Pambili to a new South Africa, with the accent on reconstruction and development, teaching and training in all the various streams of our society. Thank you.
Mandla to Comrade Rajes. Our next, and that speech encapsulates the person that she was. Our next speaker is a representative of the family in Dumutli.
Heartfelt greetings to all Rajes's friends, comrades, and families. I say families because Rajes belong to many families, and I represent one of those. At the outset, I would like to thank all of you who have played a caring role in the latter years of Rajes's life. A heartfelt thank you to you all. I would like to share some insights about my dear cousin that may have become eclipsed by Rajes the activist and the comrade. My cousin Rajes was a warrior. She has always embodied a revolutionary spirit and was never one to back down in the face of unfairness and bigotry. She was a brave, passionate woman driven by the dictates of her conscience, her principles, and her unwavering commitment to a free and fair South Africa. Rajes was a force to be reckoned with at the time when young Indian women were relegated to the kitchen. She attacked injustice wherever she found it. Her doing battle with Afrikaners in their own language was indeed a sight to behold. She would then translate into English for anyone who didn't catch the gist. Special branch officers that were sent to harass and intimidate her often themselves felt intimidated by her. She had no time for small-mindedness and conformity. Indeed, suburbia did not suit her at all. The mothers' union of our conservative neighborhood took a dim view of this worldly woman who puffed cigarettes that they rushed off to lock up their sons. Men adored her and women wanted to be her. She held strong opinions and defended them vigorously. She was schooled in the vernacular and sang Thevarum songs whilst playing the harmonium. An avid culture vulture, she loved the theater and the ballet. She played piano and could certainly hold a beat on makeshift drums. She danced with gay abandon to Pata Pata and other hits from Miriam Makeba and Hugh Masekela. A voracious reader, she has probably consumed small libraries in her lifetime. Rajes was very photogenic, and the black and white pics of the day certainly captured her allure. My mother dubbed her Annie Get Your Gun when, as a teenager, she posed with a hunting rifle, sorry. Little did Mom know at the time how prophetic her words would be. So it came as no surprise when Rajes left and went into exile. We will never know the full extent of her experiences there, but certainly the impact was clear. We each have but a glimpse of her life in exile, and she has resisted a tell-all book. A very small part of our Rajes returned, and every now and again, we will catch sight of the old girl we knew. We missed her razor-sharp wit, her sense of humor, her infectious laughter, her broad knowledge of all things academic, and the constant reminder of, and we were left with the constant reminder of a life lived in a very different time and space. We treasure the memories of our time spent alone with her, always in deep conversation. We wish to acknowledge how proud we are to say that this magnificent woman was indeed a part of our family. We are all certainly richer human beings for having known her. We were at Phyllis's funeral, Rajes and myself, and never one to leave things to chance. I asked Rajes what she wanted said about herself when the time came. I knew she'd probably given it some thought because she responded immediately. She went on to dictate the following piece by Shakespeare, and I honor her wish to be remembered so. Fear no more the heat or suns, nor the fierce winter rages. Thy duty is done, and so turned one of history's pages. May her beautiful spirit rest in peace. I thank you.
Thank you, Indu. That was a beautiful tribute to your aunt and on behalf of the family. Our next speaker is a long-standing comrade of Rajes, Comrade Ronnie Castrels. Ronnie, are you here? Okay, I'm sure we'll find him, but let me carry on.
Comrade Ronnie is muted.
Okay, Ronnie, can you please unmute? And can you join? We're waiting for you.
Comrade Maggie, I've asked Comrade Ronnie to unmute, so I suppose it's a problem with the headset. So
yeah, sorry, I'm one of these BBC born before commuters like Rajes actually. Thanks so much for having me. It's such a moving event today, and I've been incredibly moved by the previous speaker, and of course by the wonderful video that we saw of our dear Ray, as we called her in Swaziland. She was really a most beautiful and quite extraordinary human being. She was incredibly courageous. And I want to make a point about courage, because it's not easy to come by courage, which she had in abundance. And courage is never without fear. It's never without fragility. And we all know this. But Fidel Castro gives a clue, and it gives a clue to where this rather frail woman, in the physical sense, certainly not in the strength of mind and commitment, but certainly no frame of a warrior. And as the previous speaker has correctly referred to, Ray, a warrior. But Fidel speaking to departing Cuban internationalist troops going to Angola to face the racist South Africans, knew that those soldiers were nervous. And he said that no one is born brave, but the bravery that one finds comes from serving a just cause. Rajes served a just cause. Well, we all claim that we do, and we do it in our various ways. I think that in her absolute truthfulness and honesty, in her simplicity, the French use the term naivety not the way the English do, which is almost childlike, but in the sense of purity. And that was her commitment. She was such an incredibly pure human being, and her commitment to the cause, to the struggle, to the people, not herself, never a question of self-service, self-glorification, and so on with her, was absolutely unequivocally to the cause that Fidel Castro speaks about. And this is where, through all the trials and tribulations, the vicissitudes of struggle, pre-94 and post, how that truth created the beauty of this woman's spirit and her commitment, which was utterly pure. And in that, I believe she was truly courageous in the way she served. And of course, previous speaker mentioned how she might not have known about exile, the circumstances there. We had a glimpse of this in that modest, self-assuming, self-effacing way that was Rajes, that was Comrade Ray. All those names that she presented, all that danger, all that commitment not to flee, but to stand and fight for the truth, for justice, for equality, for freedom. And there are many of us on this panel today who served, some totally in Swaziland with her, and others who were based from Lusaka or Maputo and were in and out with the Judson Kuzwayo unit that she served in, and can attest to the dangers that stalked our people inside the country for sure, and she knew about that externally as well. And if one was in a place like Swaziland in the days when Eugene de Kock and the hit squads ran amok, where you never knew who was a traitor and who was a comrade, where the Swazi police were hand in glove with Eugene de Kock and the Boers, and where Rajes saw her closest comrades and friends being killed, being assassinated, being blown up, being kidnapped, and in the case of her brother-in-law, Joe, fortunately managed to get back. I mean, this was going on all the time. We know of normal life where in a normal family in normal times, from a decade to a decade, a tragedy hits a family, sometimes a murder or a dreadful accident or a tragic illness. And what this causes and does to the psyche of a human being. And with her, she stood there and she didn't give up her post. She was only called to Lusaka, where things became so dangerous that it was an impossibility and the leadership didn't want any more people sacrificed. But that was Rajes in exile, working under the noses of the Boers, under the noses of the security police, hunting every one of us. And yes, there was a fragility, and that was with all. And yes, it takes its toll on the health of human beings. And let's face it, it took its toll on her. It was a huge sacrifice that she paid. And she paid it in terms of commitment to the people, to the struggle. This is an absolute noble form of bravery and courage that those of us who knew her had the honor and the privilege to know her. I didn't know her as long as so many here. It was a brief window within some years from Maputo in Swaziland. But this is how we saw her and how we remember her. And I want to end on the note of saying that she's exemplary, and she's exemplary in the South Africa for today and this benighted world of today, because she never sought any gifts or rewards. She never sought glory. She served because that's where the truth took her. And that's her lesson for all of us in this country today. We'll ever remember somebody who, in fact, has been something of an unsung soldier, as much as she received rewards and love, but an unsung soldier. And her life stands for the unsung soldiers of our struggle. Long may her memory live. Comrades, it's up to all of us. Siyabonga Kokulu, Mali Bongwe, Comrade Ray, Mali Bongwe. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronnie, for those words in memory of Rajes, and we can see how strongly you feel. Comrades, there are a whole range of people who are posting messages on Facebook, because this event is being streamed live on Facebook. And I just want to read a message from Janet Love. Rajes was truly a force of nature, determined, loyal, and courageous. She will live on in our memories and will continue to inspire. Let me now hand over to Anu Yaku, who wants very clearly us to understand that she's not here as Zach Yakub's wife. She is here as Anu, a close friend of Rajes and somebody who tended to Rajes in the last God knows how many years. Anu?
Hi, thank you, Maggie. I wasn't going to speak initially, but I decided that after knowing Rajes for almost 46 years, I should honor her being not just a political activist, quite often forgotten by all her activist friends, her political friends, because to me, she was a human being valued by those family and friends who took time to be involved in her life and get to know her and to help towards her care. I first met Rajes in 1973 at Phyllis Naidu's home in her flat. And then between that and 1978, I began picking her up every Sunday, unless one of us was sick, and taking her to the Lake Haven Children's Home, where she volunteered to teach children music, play the piano, accompany us through all the rehearsals that we did in planning end of the year concerts and Christmas carols and that kind of a thing. She has left a lasting impression on children who are now adults in the age group of 50 to 60 all over South Africa, who lived in that home and who remember her with gratitude and appreciation for enriching their lives. Then she disappeared from my life. And on inquiry, I was told that she's gone into exile. I didn't know that she was so very politically involved. I knew she was an activist, and I was a bit surprised to hear that she was that political, as we used to say in those days. When she returned in the 90s, she renewed her acquaintance with us and would have lively debates with Zach about the unfolding political scenario. And I saw her more as his friend until one day, she had a breakdown, manifested itself by her angrily demanding whiskey, which all of us know she doesn't drink, telling me in no uncertain ways to take my fucking pink socks off. I realized then that things were bad. And between Raj, her brother, and myself, we had her admitted to Ward G at King George Hospital. And that's when I realized that I needed to spend more time with Rajes, and we began our relationship really in that year. I think it was around 2003, when we began to visit each other regularly. We ate regularly, to either in or out, went to movies, read and discussed books, exchanged books. She was an avid reader, as other people have said. And then Daya, I, and Sangri Pata arranged for her 70th birthday party. And those of you who were there know how much she enjoyed seeing so many of her old comrades from the struggle, many of whom made generous contributions towards the party. And she was touched, really, really warmly touched. And the photograph on the memorial is of her at her birthday party. And you can see how serene she was. Unfortunately, after she fell, I don't remember the year, and had a hip replacement, it became clear that she could no longer live alone. First, she was in a very unstimulating group home in local, and we were not happy with this unstimulating environment where she largely just sat around and ate her meals and was kept clean and warm. I consulted with Daya Pillay and Raj, her brother, and took the initiative to find her a better place, which ended up being the Frail Care Center of Tafta's John Kenradi House in Durban, where she lived until her death, and which she paid for, I'd like to say, just to show that she was pretty independent. Unfortunately, she often felt very lonely and isolated. She could no longer contact people as she used to, and found that a lot of people that she had been in touch with just didn't stay in touch now that she was no longer in her own home. If I knew those people, I would phone on my cell, and she was delighted to speak to them. When she was well, she would talk animatedly about those who were defrauding the state, and we would share a jolly laugh. And all of you who know Rajes know her laugh. It was loud and almost raucous when she'd say, "Thank God we didn't go into politics." I tried to see her at least once a week, take her for appointments, meals, etc., but definitely saw her at least twice a month to see to her facial and hairdressing needs. It was sad to see her decline over the years and lose interest in films, books, her writing. I last saw her in February, just before lockdown, but had stayed in telephone contact. She always remembered to ask about our children and what they were doing. Condolences to her brother's family, other family, and the friends who cared about her. Rest in peace, Rajes, my friend.
Thank you, Anu, and thank you for the care that you gave to Rajes. Our next tribute is from Comrade Terence Tyrone, who worked closely with Rajes. Comrade Trix.
Thank you. What can one say about Rajes? I mean, you listen to all the tributes, and that is Rajes. I joined the Natal political machinery towards the end of '79 and worked with Rajes, Judson Kuzwayo, Matthews Mapumulu, Ivan, Doris Kosana, Nhlanhla Ngeti, Sydney, and many others. What a privilege and honor. It was wonderful working with these people. One of the things when you meet with Rajes, and one of the things that you learn from her is that the equality of people, whether it's races or gender issues or the need to promote international solidarity. Rajes was all of those things. There was never a discussion about race or sex or sexism or stuff like that, because she took it for granted. And she led. She led in many respects in as far as those aspects of work concerned. When in our work in the political structures, we had two jobs. The first job was to build and develop the mass democratic movement within South Africa. That was our first and main responsibility. The second job was to build the underground. Now, Rajes would ask the question, did we do that job? On the first one, we were lucky in Natal. There was the Natal Indian Congress, which was still there after many years, when all the other legs of the Congress had fallen apart, but the Indian Congress was still there. Then we also had some centers of struggle, which were very key in developing the mass democratic movement within Natal. One of the institutions was the University of Natal, the black section, as well as the Natal University and Westville campuses as well. Of course, we also had the UDW, the NUSA students. Then, of course, there was the churches. Included in the churches was even the Shambe Church. So we had a good basis to create and develop and establish. And you look at what happened in the 80s. There was a proliferation of organizations throughout the society, in every little community, residents association, housing action committee, whatever it was there. Women's movement, youth organizations, was just a proliferation. And that was wonderful, and it built the solidarity and and it led to their second objective, which was to build the underground. Now, what can we say about, did we build it? Was it very successful? Because that was, Raju would ask these questions. That was her job. She would be always, she was very competent. She was an auditor, she was an accountant. She wanted us to account for the work that we did. So, did we build the underground? Yes and no, it was difficult, it was extremely difficult. But in the 90s or maybe even 2000, I was sitting with Ivan in some function. And Ivan pointed out to me many people, and he gave me their code names. And, you know, it was amazing to see. Ivan is telling me that these people, I knew them as Jack or whatever, but I didn't connect Jack with whoever the person was. I just knew Jack did this. And yeah, so it was wonderful that day, him pointing out a number of individuals in the congregation or in the gathering that we had and saying these were the people that I had known for years, but didn't know their identities, who were part of the underground. Then, of course, we also had a fellow like Kevin Koboshiana. Now, that fellow entered South Africa in 1982 and he didn't come back. He visited us in Swaziland, but he never came back to Swaziland or into exile. He one day came with a wife and he said he needs to get married. And we married with 10 of our friends in some place in Mankayan, in a little hotel there. And he then departed with his new wife. But yes, so there were a lot of successes in the work we did. I mention this because Rajes was so competent. As I say, she was like an accountant. She wanted us to audit and account for the work that we did. If she was alive today and I say, Rajes, I think we did a good job. She never liked praise or anything like that. She'd probably say to me, you know, at the moment there's COVID, and are there enough beds for the patients? Because there was no time for her to look back and to think and consider what happened in the past. So she'd ask if there are enough ventilators, if there are enough hospital beds, and are we ready for the next wave of the COVID patients? That was Rajes, a Democrat through and through, always looking to participate in the next movement forward in our country, in our democracy. Thank you. I'd like to end on that note. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a message from Pumla Williams, who says, a solid Mbokodo that some of us looked up to in what we call forward areas, full of joy with solid politics of the struggle for the liberation of South Africa. Go well, my comrade Ray, as we called you. Our next speaker is Comrade Prema Naidu, and his family have a long history with Rajas. Comrade Prema.
Thank you very much, Maggie. And I want to thank the organizers for organizing this memorial and giving me the opportunity to say a few words in condolences. First, I want to pass my condolence to Rajes' family, friends and comrades, particularly in Natal. Surely we have lost an outstanding comrade. We first met, my family and I first met Rajes around about 1970 in the offices of Phyllis Naidu. It was there that Rajes agreed to write to Indres on Robben Island, and she wrote to many other comrades in Robben Island using the word Madhu, her name as a name Madhu. And for those of you who understand Tamil, will know that it was actually meant a cow. I suppose in today's terms, one would say that actually is quite sexist, but that's what was done. Our friendship with Rajes showed us what a kind, good, and brave person she was. Rajes knew very well the dangers that she was involved in, but nevertheless, she took these risks. She was a caring and a very brave person. She regularly corresponded with my brother Indres, as I said, under the name of Madhu. And when Indres was released from Robben Island, he was there with people like Sunny, who was, I think, going to speak a bit later, Ibrahim. They were in the same section with many others. When she came to Johannesburg, she lived with us. And we in the younger generation, we didn't speak Tamil to my mother. She came and she spoke Tamil to my mother, and my mother was very excited that, yeah, she said to us, yeah, is a young person who can speak to me in my language and you people can't. I mean, she was quite a linguistic in that sense of the word. When Rajes came to Johannesburg, she insisted to see the other two comrades who were released from Robben Island. Shirish Nanabai, who lived not very far from us, in Fordsburg, which we took her there, and then I drove her to Lenasia. And while on our way to Lenasia, we met an accident. Another car came and hit us. It was a bit of a disaster, and unfortunately, Rajes didn't have the opportunity to see Reggie. Rajes belonged to that generation of activists who were brave, courageous. People like Phyllis Naidu, I've mentioned earlier, that we met through. Pumani Mudli, another outstanding comrade, was very, very brave. And that was a generation of activists who took risks, who were loyal, and who fought for the democracy that we have today. They were extremely brave and committed, comrades, to the struggle for a non-racial and non-sexist South Africa. So she played an important role in every level of our organizations in South Africa, as Terence has indicated. She was a member of the Natal Indian Congress. She was active in civic organization. She was active in the ANC underground, in Umkhonto Sizwe. She was in exile. After 1994, she played a role in building democratic structures so that we can take this country forward. Her contribution to our struggle in freedom and democracy is something that we will never forget. And with those few words, I would say, Hamba Gasla, Comrade Rajes, go well, and long live the spirit of Comrade Rajes. Thank you, Maggie.
Thanks, Prema. We have a message here from Fred Lubin. Remember, Rajes interact with people in the country, out of the country. And the message from Fred reads, we will think of Ray as she has been and will remain important in our lives, as an example of the social and political values she lived out, and for her infectious laugh and often very serious empathy with others. Comrades, our next speaker is Comrade Sunny Singh, or as I often heard Ray call him, Bobby.
Thanks, Maggie. Can you hear me, Maggie?
Yes, we can. You need to put your video on, Sunny.
Okay. I would like to bring in another perspective of Rajas. Many of us paid wonderful tribute to Rajas. Some were very painful, but bring another perspective, the problems we encountered, whether in the camps, in the residential areas, and so forth. And that problem was health conditions of comrades generally, but I would like to talk about Rajas. Many of us haven't said a word. Maybe the others will come in and say, struggle has taken many shapes and forms. The long walk of Mandela's walk was long, but with quite a terrible terrain of struggle. Rajas, well, I met her when I came out of prison in 74, and her mind was all the time active, as Trix has pointed out, so clearly. But then things became hot. She had to leave the country. Ivan had left in 78 or so, had to come and pull her out of the country before she could get arrested. But in exile, Swaziland wasn't an easy terrain to work in. It wasn't just the Swazi police, but it was also the South African security forces, death squads, operational. In particular, after the Nkumati Accord in 1974. Right. But then again, have begun to change for the West. Is that he went for training, a brief training in Angola.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, in the area of training or something, a landmine goes off. Right? And she was severely injured and she had to be rushed for treatment. Okay. But then after treatment, he got back to the frontline area, Swaziland. Okay, worked very closely. I think some of the comrades have sent out, but I want to focus on some areas on Rajas' health condition. And once comrades had a habit, or because of circumstances, had to retreat to Mozambique. And I had to find safe places for them to stay. She, Trix, and another comrade put them in a home of some foreign friends of mine. So once we got some meat, and Rajes was trying to roast the meat in a oven, and then when she opened the door, the fat or the oil spurted, burning her stomach and parts of the hand, right? So some of these encounters, the example Angolan situation and then Maputo, and she worked under very, very trying conditions, particularly in Swaziland. One incident where she and Ivan escaped death, right, where they were swimming at the Mantenga Falls, I think near close to Manzini. And guess what? The falls were surrounded by South African security police. It was just a miracle. So the kids came out rushing from the bushes, and then the police got scared, and Rajes and Ivan sprang from the pool, got into the car, and sped off. So indeed, these incidents are going to have some harrowing, experience. Will have its toll, its health, right? But as Ronnie pointed out, after the Nkumati situation became so hot, many of us have to retreat to the rear bases Zambia, many hundreds left for Angola, and others surged forward to Swaziland. But once again, in Zambia, I'm saying this, I don't want to dampen the spirit of the occasion, but people have to know what we went through, especially, it may have not been 1,000, but, many of our comrades also passed on in exile, wherever, whichever country they were, and so forth. And Rajas, been one of those steel soldiers, in spite of that adversity, she still traversed, the march towards freedom. And once I was deported to Zuma and so forth in 87 from Maputo to Zambia. So I stayed in a friend's flat, and they had gone to Denmark for a holiday. And I managed to get fish. Fish was like gold in Zambia. So I managed to get some tamarind, which was like looking for gold. I cooked a fish curry, right? And then I invited Rajes and Ivan, Mac, and Zarina. They hardly arrived. Rajes picked up the khakis. She, in the Satyagraha spirit, decided to do a march out. But behind the Satyagraha spirit lived a MK soldier. So as I intercepted her, she gave me an uppercut. Right? Okay, I was stunned. And next morning I meet her in Cairo Road. She looked at my face. My face was like full moon. She asked, Bobby, what happened to you? I didn't want to, do a counterattack. I said, no, it's probably because I had a very nasty experience as an individual in prison. So I realized, let me just be calm and cool. So where I'm going to is the pain and suffering and through this, hardships like Rajas and many others have suffered and won the freedom today. And she had gone to Holland for treatment because the Dutch had experiences from the Second World War situation. Well, following that, she even went to Moscow, then the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and so forth. So she went through all those paths, right, and get help from wherever help could come. So we pay tribute, as say, go well to Rajas, and you fought a good fight. Thank you.
Thanks, Sunny. And you showed us some of the more humane aspects as well. We've got a message from the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation. It's a long message, but I'm just going to read an excerpt. Comrade Rajes was an outstanding ANC cadre and women's leader in the liberation movement. She will be remembered for a lifelong contribution to our struggle for freedom, democracy, and women's emancipation. Hamagashwe, Comrade Rajes, you will remain an inspiration for generations to come. Comrades, our next speaker, again, is somebody who has known Rajes for many, many years. They go back a long time, Comrade Ibrahim Ismail Ibrahim.
Thank you very much, Maggie. I would like to join all those and to express my sorrow and condolences to Rajes' family and his friend. The news about Rajes came as a shock. We just had a shock recently when we heard about Vijay Ramlakan passing away, another stalwart and MK soldier. I got to know Rajes while I was a prisoner on Robben Island. As Prema said, she corresponded with us as political prisoners. There were three of them. There were three comrades, Phyllis Naidu, Pumani Modley, and Rajes. They were all friends and they constantly communicated with us on Robben Island and also assisted us in the things that we wanted done. And it was a contact with the outside world. You know, when you are a prisoner, the best thing that can happen to you is to get a letter more than a visit. And she kept us informed and kept us very happy with her correspondence. Of course, when I came out of prison in 1979, among the first people I met was Rajes. Of course, I was banned and she came to see me at home. Of course, there were other comrades as well that came to see me, like Parveen and others. But I was banned and she would defy the banning order and take me around to see people. She put me in contact with people like Suprasad, Roy Padiachi, and George Nike, who was also banned, who was also in prison with me. So she became very active, a very, a person that I could use to contact people and go around doing my underground work while I was in Durban under the banning order. Of course, she left for exile, as you just said, the reason why she left. Because she was exposed somehow and the police were going to arrest him. George Nike and I also left for exile in 1980, and among the first people we met when we went to Swaziland was Ivan and Rajes Pillay. They then arranged for us to cross over the border to get to Maputo. Of course, after staying some while in exile overseas, I was then deployed again to Swaziland by Moses Mabhida at that time. But as it was said that Swaziland was a very dangerous place. There was collaboration between the South African security police and the Swazis, some elements in the Swazi police. People were being kidnapped, people were being killed. I know in one house when the South African security knocked at the door and with a machine gun shot the ladies open and killed everyone that were asleep. So Swaziland was a very dangerous place. And but Ivan, who had married Rajes at that time, were able to survive. I think both Ivan and Rajes had perfected the art of underground work. And they were very careful in the way they operated, and they were able to survive. Of course, they had contact with the Provincial unit in South Africa. There's close contact with them, with Mo Sheikh and others as well. So they were building the South African political underground. When I went to Swaziland, I was also deployed there with Rajes and Ivan to build this underground. Of course, then she went to Angola for training. And unfortunately, which happened to quite a few of our comrades, they injured themselves. I think she was handling a hand grenade and probably did not know what to do, and then she injured her arm. She was a bit traumatized when she came back. I think that I must say that she had a bit of a psychological problem, and I must say that Ivan, being Ivan, a really human being, took very good care of her and looked after her. And as Bobby said, of course, she went for other treatments. And I must say that she was a very disciplined, she had iron discipline. She was a very disciplined comrade. She had a type of discipline which is difficult to find nowadays. It reminds me of the discipline that we had on Robben Island. She was committed, very strongly committed to the liberation of the poor, the dispossessed. She was truly a non-racial person. She was a no-nonsense person. She would, speak to power. She'll tell you what she thinks, that what's in her mind. Quite often in Swaziland, she would tell me off that I was wrong, and sometimes we have a big fight. And she would stand her ground to say, no, comrade, this is not right. I don't agree with you. She spoke truth to power, and later days, of course, she was very critical of the corruption, the fashionism, and the mismanagement of the organization, etc. But she was a dedicated comrade, as I said, a no-nonsense comrade, and a very, very disciplined comrade. I'd like to say, Hamba Gashle, Rajes, we will honor your memory by contributing to the struggle and learn from the example you left us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dee. You're, as you can see, comrades, an exemplary human being. There's a message here from Nsiki, who worked with Rajes. They're part of the group that worked together. A strong and resilient comrade she was, with a great sense of humor and infectious laughter. May her soul rest in peace. Comrades, at this point, let me now call on Nhlanhla Ngidi, Lazarus as he was known, to pay his tribute.
Thank you, Program Director, and greetings to all the comrades. Thank you for inviting me to say a few words about this giant of a woman, Comrade Ray. I'm really honored. I did a tribute to her honor on my Facebook page. I'm not going to repeat all that I said there, except to say that there are many who, like Comrade Ray, lived and died in obscurity, yet they were the backbone of our struggle for liberation. Some of these were deliberately pushed to the sidelines, even as they attempted to contribute in building the new South Africa under democratic conditions. We owe it to these unsung heroes and heroines to correct this injustice, and memorial services such as these are a starting point. Speaking about Comrade Ray brings to my mind the characteristics of a true revolutionary, and they are the following: selflessness. A revolutionary must betray his own interests for the benefit of others. Because of her skills and education, Comrade Ray could have achieved a lot for herself, but she sacrificed all of that for the oppressed. The next one is integrity. The values of a revolutionary must be such that no one can question his or her intentions when doing anything. These values must be based on high moral standards. Comrade Ray had no hidden agendas. What you saw is what you got. Fearlessness. It is a sad reality that at this moment our movement is gripped by fear of every nature, such that many of us are scared of talking the truth. Comrade Ray was fearless and even prepared to talk truth to power, a real hallmark of a true revolutionary. As we dip our revolutionary banner in her honor, let us rededicate ourselves to the characteristics mentioned above. Comrade Ray was an ANC cadre who gave her life to the ANC, not a faction of the ANC. As we rededicate ourselves to uplifting the true qualities of a revolutionary and a real cadre of the ANC, let us also vow to excise the demon of factionalism in our movement, to unite the ANC in a manner that when Comrade Ray looks back, she could be proud that her legacy in us lives on. Thank you.
Thanks, Comrade. We have a message here from the Solidarity Group for Peace and Justice. They pass their condolences to the family and friends of Comrade Rajes. Comrade Rajes attended a number of our meetings, and we will always remember the passion and commitment expressed by her. Thank you. Our next speaker is someone whom many of you have referred to in the course of this memorial tribute meeting. I call on Comrade Ivan Pillay.
Thank you, Chair. First, thank you to everybody that's attending and has made their contribution today. I'm going to start at the end. I last saw Rajes in October 2020, in about mid-October. It was a surreal setting. Visitors had to wear a disposable overall and masks. And she herself was fully covered. She had a mask and one of those plastic visors. And we had to sit in clearly defined spaces. She said that she was depressed due to the COVID restrictions. She had not received many visitors, and nor could she visit outside the home she was living in. I did not know Ray before I went into exile. I suppose we were all activists, but it's a sign of the times that people organized in groups, in collectives, and some people are not known to each other. I received a message to try and alert Ray, which I did. And we hit on great difficulties. And we had to abandon a vehicle. We had to use public transport and find a safe house and yet not contaminate any ANC contacts, which we did. And we eventually got to Swaziland. And throughout that experience, she did what she had to do without a problem, with bravery. I thereafter spent many, many years with Ray in very, very difficult circumstances. Ray was usually a direct person, a decisive person. When she had decided, she did not waver. And momentary setbacks and diversions did not deter her from her goals. She was an assertive woman who had to navigate her way through a male-dominated movement, and furthermore, a movement operating in clandestine conditions. That too was incredibly difficult. But at that time, in the ANC, amongst other things, Ray had something that ensured she made a great contribution to our struggle. Unlike many who joined the MK and the ANC during that time, she was a working person. And it showed. Here was a person who had absorbed the discipline of formal employment. She was punctual. She was meticulous and methodical in her work. And not on this day or that day, but every day. And it is true what some others present have said. She did not expect any special favors. But more remarkable, instead she gave. Her red Volkswagen Beetle was used in Swaziland for many years as an ANC vehicle. Whilst training in Angola, and I won't repeat what people have said, except to say that the operation in Angola was not successful. She was still in pain. And the arm had not been set properly, we had to organize a corrective surgery in Swaziland, and which we organized in secrecy by Dr. Mariana Lubin, the same Lubin family that has just sent a message. They are Dutch nationals who now live in the UK. Our general environment was one of unrelenting and accumulating pressure. The kidnapping of Joe, the murder of very close comrades and friends such as Krishna Rabelal, Jabu and Patim Somi and others did damage us. I don't mean the movement in a general way, but it does damage us as individuals. And worse was to come. In and after 1984, the security forces, with the help of 10 codes from the ANC, unleashed widespread terror in the tiny kingdom of Swaziland. The pressure cooker-like conditions took its toll on Rajes, and I imagine many more. And she was withdrawn in early 1986. Hamba Gasle, Rajes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan. I think that that reflects years and years of working together, and really the words obviously cannot do as much as he would like to say, but we understand. Comrades, we have a message here. We have various messages. The Facebook account where the event is being streamed has numerous messages. I can't read all of them, but we do acknowledge them and we will pull them together later. Let me now move on and just say that we were also going to have a tribute by Comrade Dumisani Nduli, who worked with Rajes, but he is having difficulty logging in. So we will pass that by, but we do note that he has been trying to connect. Our next speaker is somebody who gave me a bit of grief this afternoon when she called. She said that she refuses to speak after Comrade Mac Maharaj because he is her senior, and the ANC that she was brought up in didn't look at things like the position you hold. It looked at the experience and the seniority of comrades, and therefore she would not speak after Comrade Mac, although in terms of what people these days call protocol, that is what would have been expected. But she was very clear to me that this will not happen, and she insisted that she would go before Comrade Mac. Our next speaker, comrades, is the Deputy Secretary General of the ANC, Comrade Jesse Duarte.
Good afternoon, comrades. Good afternoon, Comrade Maggie. Apologize for my voice. It's just recovering from a bout of something or other. Comrades, I must confess that I did not know Comrade Ray at all. I knew about a woman working in the Swaziland South African Council of Churches, at times who was a contact person, but it was more Geraldine Fraser-Muleketi in Zimbabwe that we communicated with and met with Ray Alexander often to discuss. One of the important things to do was to set up women's structures within the country. And I think if we ask the question, were we successful? I would say marginally so. So what I really want to speak about is the fact that people like Comrade Ray are the backbone of the ANC even today. People who ask for nothing at all, who go to branch meetings and even withstand the insults that come to them because they may have had an experience as a person living in exile, a veteran of the ANC, a person with huge amounts of gifts to give the ANC, but are met in today's ANC with a rather different set of circumstances. the ignobility of tribalism, racism, xenophobia, antiism that has engulfed our movement would not have sat well with what I hear you say about somebody like Comrade Ray. It would have upset her, and probably did, in her life from the time she returned from exile. We live with many contradictions. One of them is that for many of us, we cannot forego this movement. We have to keep it going. We have to keep it alive. We have to try to make sure that the struggling branches, where some are non-existent, keep going, where the government's program is put out in terms of what the ANC has committed to the people. Very much aware of the fact that one of the battles that we're losing is the battle between making sure that the poorest of the poor in this country are looked after, at the same time understanding fully that the pressure from the rich will never go away. Today, there is a strange debate going on. As I must tell you that we constantly get messages every day, about who has passed away. Today, at least 4 new messages about comrades who are in parliament, comrades who are serving in various structures, comrades from the party, comrades from COSATU, the General Secretary today of the Municipal Workers Union, gone. A couple of weeks ago, we lost the General Secretary of the National Union of Mine Workers, gone, COVID. And the futility of a debate about where the vaccine must come from seems to be preoccupying our minds, as if an ideological vaccine will cure all the evils, whether the vaccine is from China or Russia or from somewhere else in the world. The poor are the people who are suffering right now because of COVID. If it isn't for the SASSA grant and the SASSA food parcels, their suffering would be even worse. So one must really say to the comrades who work right now within SASSA, without you, without the Comrade Rays amongst you who are not known, who work day and night and who are not asking for anything except to serve, there wouldn't be a country to look forward to. And we engage in these futile debates, even with the many strange stories that are told about the vaccine, and actively being discouraged to use the vaccine when and if it comes by people who have many conspiracy theories. I don't think these debates would have sat well with Comrade Ray. We ask the same questions about beds, about ventilators, but one of the things that COVID has done, it has shown us up very badly, that our plans cannot succeed if they are based on who makes the most money out of what must be done. And so it is with a shameful heart that one must say, those people who are consistently looting our state coffers are people who will continue to loot if we do not continue to expose. Some of us are paying a price for that exposition. We don't talk much about it, but the price will be continued to be paid long into the future, long after the Zondo Commission has finished. The price will continue to be paid for making sure that the looting stops. But what is greatly important in speaking to an audience such as yourselves, comrades, I must just say that it is very difficult when you speak with people who doubts that the ANC should continue. And you know in your heart that you can never live in a country where there is no ANC, because the opposite to that will be chaos, and undoubtedly a civil war that we don't all want. But at the same time, it can only be an ANC that is lifted back to where it was through the work of all of us. So as we honor Comrade Ray, and we honor all of those who are the Comrade Rays of the ANC, Some have died without being known and have had no memorial service. Some of us have lost more than one relative in our families. And that is not really the subject for today. What we can only ask is that that courage that Comrade Ronnie Kasrils talks about comes back. That courage to fight for what is right, to make sure that justice is abound, and to make sure that we are not caught up in a who from, where from vaccine, but a vaccine that will be given to the poor first, to the frontline workers first, to the people who need it the most first, before it is offered to the wealthy and the rich. Comrade Maggie, thank you for accepting what I said this morning. I'm sorry that I gave you grief, but I stand by what I said. Thank you very much, comrades.
Thanks, Comrade Jesse. And no, the grief was most welcome, because these are the values of the organization that we need to hold up. So thank you for that, and thank you for raising the matter. We have messages also, comrades, from Comrade Mo Sheikh, who reflects here in saying that Comrade Ray was an outstanding leader, an endearing, empathetic comrade who will always keep her close to our hearts and dear in our memories, MJK. And there's a message from Abba Omar, who says, thanks for the memories, comrades. As Comrade Bobby Sani says, some of this may be painful, but we need to celebrate the lives and contributions while remembering the joyful moments. Our next speaker is Comrade Mac Maraj. Doesn't require any introduction, so I'm going to hand over to him directly.
Thank you very much, Comrade Maggie. I am, of course, a bit embarrassed that Comrade Jessie has done this once more to me. She has done it many times where she has given way to me, and I'm deeply humbled by it, but I will take revenge on her when I meet her face to face. Comrades, as I listen to everybody, the thought that's run through me is what made Ray so special to so many of us. There are many who remember her for her bravery, warmth, her caring, and her friendship. But the friendship that I'm referring to transcends the comradeship that comes from belonging to the same organization or sharing a common vision. When you share the trenches in battle, when your comrades open cover fire so that you may advance towards the enemy, when they risk their lives to enable you to retreat to the safety of a shallow trench, when you nurse each other's wounds and urge each other not to succumb to pain, not to yield to the threat of impending death, then at such moments a special chemistry comes into play. There develops in my mind an unbreakable bond, a bond that is founded on respect, trust for each other, and an abiding honesty towards each other. For without these three elements, comradeship becomes a hollow word. Friendship is a bond that separation cannot, by time, distance, and circumstances, cannot be separated by them. Nor can this bond be unraveled by death. That is how I came to know Ray. That is the Ray I shall remember forever. The Ray who, despite the trauma she endured and despite her illness, never lost her commitment to the cause of liberation. The Ray who remained concerned when she thought we were tarnishing our record or we were deviating from our path. We have all listened to her acceptance speech on the video today. Think back. She hardly spoke a word about herself or about the challenges that she faced in order to be treated as an equal in our movement. And believe me, she suffered those. She spoke entirely of the comrades with whom she shared the trenches, the atmosphere of risks under which they soldiered on, and the many who gave up their lives so that we may be free. That was the quintessential Ray. For her, the freedom struggle was about others, about bringing freedom to the people. It was and it remains for her serving others. And I could sense in that address that the reward that came her way from the knowledge that in achieving democracy, we succeeded in occupying a critical beachhead to transform the lives of all who live in this our scarred but also beautiful country. But there remains a question mark as to how effectively we have used it and how effective we shall use it in that beachhead in the future. Ray's sense of service to the people should remind us of a crucial element of the way ahead. From the time our organization, the ANC, turned to be mass-based and mass action-oriented, our membership has been nurtured in activism. But our organization today does not place any obligation whatsoever on a member or its leaders to serve the people in the areas and the communities in which the member lives or represents. Whereas civic activism should be the default position of an ANC member, we have relegated activism to the civic organizations with whom we are finding it difficult to make common cause. We promised ourselves that organizational renewal will enable us to overcome the host of deep-seated challenges that confront our country. But unless the example of comrades like Rajes, as servants of the people, is woven into that renewal, we will flounder and fail in meeting our promises to the nation. Hamba Gasler, dear friend, long may your friendship, born in the trenches of struggle, guide us as we strive to become, like you, and no matter how deeply we may have been wounded, as we strive to become true servants of the people. Hamba Gasler, Comrade Ray.
Thanks, Comrade Mac, and thanks for giving us those very sobering words going forward, because whilst we are looking back at Ray's life, we must also look forward in how we can continue the legacy that she has left. I now want to hand over to Comrade Daya Pillay, or Judge Daya Pillay, who will do the vote of thanks, but to say also that Daya was one of those people who gave a lot of her time looking after and ensuring that Ray was cared for. Thank you, Daya.
To the family, friends, and comrades of Rajes, I'm taking my cue from many of the speakers, particularly you, Mac. How do we thank people who do what we do simply because we are human? None of us expect to be thanked for what we did for Rajes and what we might still do for her in her memory. But Rajes was gracious and, as we all know, effusive in expressing her gratitude. So on her behalf, I thank all of the speakers who, in her lifetime, loved, supported, and protected and inspired her. She wanted an ANC funeral, so thanks to the ANC for realizing her wish, for giving Rajes a political home, for honoring her contribution by hosting this virtual memorial, for the floral tributes, and for bestowing the ANC flag to her family. For her brother, Rajakrishnan, her sister-in-law, Maliga, her niece, Keshni, and her nephews, Sivendran and Parmeswaran, Rajes bore deep and abiding affection and gratitude. You bore the burden of constantly worrying about her whereabouts, her personal safety, her health, and her welfare. You gave her stability, an anchor she called home. Most of all, you gave her family and children. neither of which she was able to create for herself, something she regretted with palpable sadness. On behalf of all of us, I want to thank you, Rajes, for being you. You practiced courage, not just spoke of it, but you practiced courage, conviction, and commitment by sacrificing your personal needs and aspirations in the cause of humankind. To the end, you remained intellectually agile, alert, and unwavering in your beliefs. On a personal note, I am grateful to you for shaping my life, for loving, protecting, and nurturing me, for your feistiness and fierceness. But when we last met on the 29th of October 2020, you gripped me with your eyes. You still do. You longed for a hug or just a touch, not possible under COVID conditions. I regret that our outing together in July 2013 resulted in the accident that confined you ever after to hospitals and care facilities. The past 7 years have been hard, but only you could bear it with such fortitude, grace, and dignity. Thank you, Rajes, for being you. Thank you.
Thanks, Taya. And you can see that, the deep emotion that she feels. I think all of us in different ways. In a way, we must thank Rajes that we are brought together in this forum. It's a strange thing to say, but we don't have enough of these forums. And I think we do need to find ways of getting together to talk and to look at how we can move our country forward as well. We want to just close this tribute at this point. I must say that there have been more messages that have come in, but we have a time limit to the event. We will convey these to the family, and any other messages can be sent to us so that we can put them together. Thank you everyone for attending, and as a tribute to Comrade Rajes, as we end this gathering, let us play music that befits her.
Thank you, everyone.